This week, we're going to talk about what's ahead for the 2021 Kitsap County housing market. This is part 2 in a series. Last week, we discussed why is the Kitsap County housing market so hot. So, I'm Stephanie Dupuis with Dupuis team at Keller Williams West Sound. What's ahead for the 2021 housing market? It's going to come down to 3 things: inventory, interest rates, and income stability. Remember those 3 items, because that's how you can predict what's ahead: inventory, interest rates, and income stability. Okay, we're going to break those down today. First, we're going to address interest rates, because that's the easiest of the 3. Interest rates are already at record lows, and the reality is that because they're already at record lows, we've gotten ourselves into a jam. All right, the federal government, the Fed rate is at 0%. Can't really go much lower than that. We could go negative, but we're not going to get into that this week. All right, so the mortgage rates are already probably as low as we're going to see them. And what we've done by doing that is we've taken away one of our best tools for helping a struggling economy. Typically, when the economy is in trouble, the federal government lowers interest rates, people borrow, and it puts money back in the economy, and it gives it fresh life. Okay? It's a great tool. They did it back in 2008 during the recession. They've done it forever. We don't have that tool anymore. So what the government's done instead is they've been doing incentives. We've had quantitative easing going on in the background. We've had the CARES Act, PPP loan, and a couple other government incentive programs. And the government's probably going to have to keep doing those because we don't have any room to lower interest rates any lower. All right, second one, income stability. It's not very stable right now, I'd say. Our income stability is very unstable. So let's look at those numbers. And before we go any further, I want to tell you where we got these numbers. We looked at raw data for this. We got our data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, from the Census Bureau, and from the Washington Employment Security Department. So we went in and we just looked at the raw data. So we're going to share that data with you today. Also, later on, we're going to share some data on forbearance and such, and we got that information from the Mortgage Bankers Association. Okay, so income stability. Currently, we have 44 million people unemployed in the United States. All right, what we need to look at when looking forward to the 2021 housing market is how many of those people are still going to be unemployed. That's the big question, and no one really knows. So what I've been doing is I'm looking at how many people of that 44 million are currently truly unable to pay their mortgage payment, rent payment, etc. And then we have to estimate how many we think are going to go back to work. And honestly, it's simply an estimate, okay? And I'm going to be very transparent as I can about how I'm approaching that. So currently, 21 million are receiving unemployment benefits. 4.9 million are furloughed. 6.6 million have dropped out or become discouraged. Okay, this adds up to 32.5 million people right now. Currently, 32.5 million people. For comparison, at the peak of the 2008 recession, we had 18 million people that fit this category. Let's dial that down now to Kitsap County. Kitsap County looks much better statistically than what we're seeing nationally. I'm going to back up a little bit. One more statistic. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, only 14% of the temporarily unemployed went back to work in July. That's only 1 month. So not putting too much weight into that, but it's a hard stat, our raw data to follow, okay? And I'm glad they're tracking that. We need to be tracking that because of what's going on with COVID. Okay, now let's go to Kitsap County. In Kitsap County, 45% of our workforce went back to work in July that were unemployed prior. So significant difference locally compared to nationally. That's great news, really great news. And it's also not surprising because we have a different employment demographic in Kitsap County than we do nationally. And what you're going to see, and I'm saying this, you're going to see different employment statistics nationally than what we experience here in Kitsap County. How the situation economically is going to affect us is going to be very different than other areas of the country. You know, Las Vegas, for example, is still experiencing huge unemployment numbers because it's an entertainment region. They've got a different employment base. So expect that. Don't get wound up if you see, you know, disaster somewhere. It's not likely to happen to the extent in Kitsap County, if at all, because we have a completely different demographic, which is good news, somewhat insulated here. So Kitsap County in April, we had 4.5% unemployment in April 2020. Currently we have 8.3% unemployment as of June 2020. So significant improvement in our unemployment situation, and income stability improved in Kitsap County. All right, so let's take those numbers now and use them to predict best we can. We're just estimating what might happen with income stability in 2021. So if only 14% nationally went back to work, all right, in July nationally, I think that's worst case scenario, yet 45% went back to work in Kitsap County. So we've got that range. That's hard data. And a lot of employment, you know, what do they, people look out at employment stats, that kind of thing, are expecting maybe as many as 70%. So we really have a range of 14% worst case to 70% best case. So let's look at those two ranges. If only 14% go back to work from now, we're looking at still having 28 million unemployed entering into 2021 housing market. So we could have significant income instability in 2021. Best case though, if 70% go back to work, we're only going to have 10 million unemployed. But here's the thing. Okay, let's put that in perspective. During the Great Recession, we averaged around 10 million unemployed. And 10 million unemployed is still a lot. Back in February 2020, we only had 5 million unemployed. That was record unemployment, but it's still double what we had in February. So, best case scenario, still not that great, but still a lot of people who are unable to pay their mortgage and rent. We got to keep that in mind. Because, as we know, when people can't pay their mortgage and rent, they end up selling, short selling, or foreclosing. And all three of those increase inventory. When inventory goes up, prices go down, and that affects the housing market. Can be positive for buyers. They can pick up some deals. It can be negative for sellers. All right, so let's go to inventory. Inventory is affected by income stability. These are all connected, okay? So, as the income stability, if it stays low and remains unstable, which we just looked at, the likelihood of that is very high to some degree. We're simply looking at how unstable is it going to be, right? And so in all likelihood, we're going to see some sort of inventory increase due to income instability. It's just what we're looking at in all likelihood. And we have income instability, people can't pay, they're going to be selling, and inventory goes up, prices go down. So that's one thing that's estimated for the 2021 housing market. The next thing is forbearances. Remember those? Remember back in March? Everyone thought it was great, we're going to get forbearances. People started warning people not to do forbearances. There was a little bit of hoopla about that. So let's talk about forbearances now. Since March, we've had 4.3 million people apply for forbearances. What a forbearance is They are allowed to not make their payment, but they have to make up the difference later, either as a lump sum or installment payments or some other arrangement with their lender. And it really varies how that happens, okay? Here's what you need to know about forbearances. 4.3 million people have already filed for forbearance. Contrast that to 2008, there were 3.8 million foreclosures. So we have more people who have applied for forbearance than we had foreclosures between 2007 and 2010. That number stuck out to me. Not everybody who's applied for forbearance will foreclose. We don't know how many will. We don't have any statistics on this. We can only guess. We do know from student loan forbearances, we have some numbers from that. You know, we know there will be a certain percentage of these forbearances that do go into default. We do know that. The question is, how many? Okay? And I think it's only logical that the higher the unemployment, the higher percentage of forbearances that will go into default. That's logic. All right. Here's the next thing you know about forbearances. The first due date for forbearances is August 31st. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're likely to have some new information in the next couple of weeks about how forbearances are going to affect the housing market in 2021. Now, people can extend 180 days if they have hardship. So they have the option. Some people, I think what we're going to see is this forbearance issue. We're going to keep kicking the can down the road a bit. And the government could step in. So there's quite a few caveats here with the income stability, the forbearances, all this kind of stuff. Lots of things we can't predict right now. How the government's going to respond, who's going to kick the can down the road, how that can's going to get kicked. All these things we don't know. We don't know how COVID's going to affect the income stability, and then therefore, you know, what thing they're going to allow the forbearances to do and adapt that and change it. We don't know any of that stuff. However, we have a hard deadline coming up August 31st with one extension of 180 days. And those timelines are coming up. And we have people who've been unemployed that whole time. And those who have to pay a lump sum are going to be in trouble. And those who don't might have a larger mortgage payment with still no income to pay that. The last thing here is one of the things that keeps being brought up is that we won't see the number of foreclosures we see or saw in 2008 because people have more equity in their home, and that is true. People do have more equity in their homes than they did in 2008, significantly more equity. The thing is if we have significant income instability, like we do right now, they don't have the money to pay those mortgages, whether they have equity or not. Equity does not pay a home mortgage. I'm going to say it again, equity does not pay a home mortgage. So, best case, those people sell. And if we have a lot of people selling, we're going to have a lot of homes flooding the market or entering the market, which will increase inventory. And what happens when we increase inventory? It affects the housing market and brings prices down. So no matter which way you slice it, I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the raw data, and I think that what we're looking at in 2021 is increased inventory and some degree of income instability, increased inventory, and prices coming down just a bit, if not a lot. We may see some foreclosures, short sales, but best case, more homes on market. So that's the estimate. However, there's a ton of things that could affect this. How the government responds, what happens with COVID, and how we all respond to this together. So that's the best we know right now. Okay. Please leave questions below. This is a big topic. There's a lot of data that was left out. We just hit the big spots here on this one. And if you found this valuable, please share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, you know the drill. And thank you for being here. We'll see you here next week. I'm Stephanie Dupuis with Dupuis at Keller Williams West Sound.